it's me, Kaylin. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. In this video, I'm going to be talking about the top 7 things that I actually like and love about living in a small Namibian town as an African American expat and mother abroad. So this is a regular street in my town. That is, I think, the local Ministry of Finance. That's a taxi. This is the Ministry of Gender Equality, what is it? Gender Equality and Child Welfare. So a lot of these are government like offices, basically. And down there, that's the police station. You can see police cars. Police truck. Okay. This is the Ministry of Justice in that building there. So there's like court cases and stuff. That is a hiking point. So these cars are like taxis, and you can get a ride to a nearby town. No parking sign, very regular stuff. What I like about Namibia is that a lot of the names of the streets are named after like black Namibians, freedom fighters, and just different, what's the word? Important people in Namibia that have done important things. I can't think of the word, but yeah, so that's like Dr. Franz and Dongo. A lot of the streets here are named after actual like people, Africans, so I like that. And this is one of the biggest intersections in my town. So people are sitting on the grass, relaxing. This street basically is connected to the highway. So you go to the right all the way up, there'll be the highway to Windhoek. You go to the left all the way up, you'll be going to the northern part of Namibia. Here's a sign. Yeah, so those are different towns on the sign on the left. So this is just everyday life here. There's street vendors over there. Those are, again, you can get rides over there. Those are cars that like taxis basically to other towns for a fee. That guy's watering the grass. So yeah, my supermarket is over here. Yeah, that's my supermarket, the supermarket, the main one I go to. And it's just everyday life here basically. And that's what people do. People just relax on the grass. The weather is nice. It's not too hot right now because it's the winter season. So yeah, it's a nice time of year. You can actually sit outside, not have to sit under the shade. So yeah. And like I said, that's a taxi. Taxis have numbers on them. That's how you know they're official taxis. So yeah. Over here is where I pay. This is the company, Telecom, that I get my wireless internet from at home. It's Telecom. I pay there. We pay there. Then the post office is just next door. So this is like the main road in my town basically. So, and this is a Thursday morning, almost 12:30 in the afternoon, actually. So, just to give you an idea of the vibe here in the middle of the day, it's not like super busy. This is the main street. There's a few other main streets, Our mall is down there. On that street. That's a police station. So yeah, everyday life here. Everyday life. Like I said, that's the supermarket. It's a small shopping complex that it's in. And you see the supermarket is Spar. Yeah, the ATM is there for FNB Bank, First National Bank of Namibia. Wimpy is a fast food chain. Pharmacy. And that's the parking lot of the supermarket. And that's it. Everyday life in Namibia. That's a gas station right there. They call them service stations here. That's a gas station. Just like back home in the US, they have a little shop attached to them. This is a residential area, typical residential area in my town. See? Houses, quiet streets, very nice, very chill, very peaceful. Here's a house. Yeah, it's another street. There's a house behind there, you see? A lot of the houses look just like this. Now there's also a what they call the location, which is like lower income. You'll see older homes, tin shacks and things like that. So this is definitely like middle/upper income type of area here. This is a house. Now, apparently some of you have gotten the impression that I am completely miserable in Namibia. What I thought was really just being open about cultural immersion and being an expat and the things that are different here and just the general adjustments that I have had to make over the years, especially in terms of being a mother here and just the normal adjustments of life in terms of becoming a mother. I think a lot of people have slightly misinterpreted as me being miserable and needing to go home. But the truth is, it's not that cut and dry. Living abroad is not that cut and dry. Some days you'll want to go home, some days you won't, and I recognize that. I'm learning just to allow myself to go through those ups and downs that are really just basically the challenges of being an expat and living in a foreign society. So I decided to do a video about what I love about living in a small Namibian town. Most African American expats, I think, living on the continent of Africa share a lot of reflections coming from capital cities. I think I'm one of the few African Americans out here that's not living in a capital city. So I think it's an important perspective to share. And to be honest, when I first moved to this particular small town, it was challenging for me for many different reasons, and it still is. But through, I would say, the past couple of years, I have learned that it has been a humbling and healthy experience. And there's actually a lot to love about living in my small Namibian town. So let's get into the video. The first thing that I love about living in my small Namibian town is that it is cheaper. So in Namibia, you have the capital city, which is Windhoek, and that is basically the most expensive place to live in Namibia. And when it comes to living in Africa or moving to an African country, I think what a lot of people overlook are the smaller towns. Everyone is so focused on the capital cities, but to be honest, if you're looking for more affordable real estate or more affordable rent, this is the type of community that you want to live in. So look past the capital cities. The next thing that I love about living in a small Namibian town is that it's a very intimate experience. Now, on one hand, you don't have that much privacy, and no matter where you go, you always bump into somebody. But on the flip side, I realize that it's sort of a nice experience and a nice way to live in terms of the sense of community. It's almost like one big village. And this is coming from a native New Yorker. You know, I think I am very used to privacy and people just doing their own thing. But here it's not like that. Not a day goes by really where I don't bump into someone I know. And so it's kind of a nice, cozy experience. People kind of look out for each other in a way, I've realized. And someone you know is never too far away. So I think that's really nice. Another thing I really like about living in my small Namibian town is that the crime is a lot lower than it is in the capital city. I'm not sure if that's because of the lower population here, probably, maybe, I don't know. But there has been, I would say, from what I've been reading and hearing, a bit of an uptick in crime in Namibia's capital city, unfortunately. And so here you are a bit less likely to, I think, become a victim of crime. Here the statistics are definitely not as high, which of course is great. Another thing that I love about living in a small Namibian town is that it has forced me to become deeper immersed into Namibian culture. So at one point I did live in Windhoek, Namibia's capital, and what I found is that it was a pretty comfortable lifestyle for me. There were other Americans around. You know, you can really find yourself living in a lifestyle almost similar to the one back home because it's a pretty comfortable city, as are many African capital cities. You've got the plush malls and just lots of shopping. All of your wants are there. So you can find yourself really living in a pretty comfortable lifestyle and a bit isolated, I would say, as well, kind of in that big city, everyone's in their own cubicle type of lifestyle where everybody kind of is doing their own thing. But I think living in a small Namibian town, at least in my case, it has really forced me to kind of have a closer look at Namibian society and Namibian culture because everybody's sort of squeezed together, and when you're squeezed together in a small town like the one that I live, you really get to interact with people at a deeper level more frequently, and so you just automatically become deeper immersed into the culture. For example, like I'm a member of a WhatsApp group, a business WhatsApp group specifically for my town here. And you know, it's like when someone posts in the group like about their new business, I'm like, oh, I know exactly where that is, you know. Or there's local festivals that happen annually in my town, and so now I know when the annual festivals are for X, Y, and Z, and because it's a smaller community, you can really kind of start to get a feel for and keep tabs on really what's going on, what's happening, who's who sells what on what days of the month, and things like that. So I think it really makes for a deeper cultural immersion. So another thing that I really like about living in my small Namibian town is that I get to see development in Africa at a first-hand perspective, you know. It's one thing to read about Africa is rising and hear about all of the development that's really happening and all the change that is happening around Africa, but it's another thing to live it. And by living in a small Namibian town, I am really seeing development and growth and change on a first-hand basis. There are many changes happening in the capital here as well, but a lot is already there, and I feel like in smaller African towns and in smaller Namibian towns is where you can really see what's going on. Every year there's a new business. You see the ebb and flow of new business opportunities when people see something that is needed and they bring it. You know, there's not a lot here. There's a lot of new construction going on as well. So you really get to see firsthand just development. When a new bank comes, when they bring a new ATM, so that there's, you know, now there's, instead of 5 ATMs, there's 6. Just little things like that, and you're really getting to see just what development really looks like, because it's not always $1 billion of aid coming from this country to that country. It's really just people in a small community in Namibia coming together and working together to bring new services and to expand on what's available. And so as an African American, I feel pretty lucky to have been afforded the opportunity just to see development like this. I mean, how many African Americans get to see this perspective and to see African development happening? So I think that's pretty cool. I also like that by living in a small Namibian town, I have really been pushed outside of my comfort zone, and it is uncomfortable many days. There are, for example, power outages and things that just get on my nerves all the time, basically. But on the other hand, I personally am really one for growth. and personal development and for maturity. And I think that a lot of that has come for me basically through living in a small Namibian community and having to step outside of my comfort zone and be pushed outside of my comfort zone and not being able to lean on a whole bunch of other expats that are living nearby and all the quote unquote Western amenities that are around. You know, you really have to kind of step outside of your comfort zone to meet people, to do different types of things, to get certain types of things done. Everything doesn't just come to you. You often have to go to it. And so I think in terms of living in a small Namibian town, it has been uncomfortable, but in hindsight, a very healthy experience for any adult, and definitely for me. I would say before I moved to this town, I was not as mature and independent and thick-skinned as I am now. And so I think I'm all here for that. Living in small town Namibia, you learn how to live with less. And as a New Yorker, I know this to be true. Coming from a society where you have everything that you want at your fingertips, it is really interesting to adapt into a small African town like the one that I live in, which is just very limited in the shopping options. In the supermarkets here, they have stuff to choose from, definitely, but it's nothing compared to what I'm used to in America. And even when I go back home to America, it's like the options in the supermarkets it's overwhelming actually. It takes time just for my eyes to adjust to just how much you can choose from in American supermarkets. And so I have really learned to live with less here. And I think that's also a healthy experience when I think about it. When I get frustrated because they don't have X, Y, and Z in my town, and I sit and reflect and I realize it's not a bad thing. Did you really need that? You know, I have a lot of stuff in my apartment that I have bought that I did not need. A lot of clutter, a lot of crap that I never use. So I'm learning that minimalism is a lifestyle that I really want to live. And the last thing that I really love about living in a small Namibian town has to do with entrepreneurship, with business opportunities. Again, if you are looking to move to an African country or you're interested in business opportunities in an African country, please look outside of the capital cities. Many of these towns that are outside of African capital cities, including the town that I currently live in, they still have a lot of business opportunities. A lot of businesses are just not here, and a lot of stuff basically gets done in the capital city or in South Africa, not here in the local town. So there are so many different sectors that are still wide open basically for people to dive right into and start a business in that sector and fill that need in that town. And when I first moved to Namibia, I really never saw myself as an entrepreneur. I was a lot younger. I was also intimidated by the idea of being an entrepreneur. And living here, I have seen people start businesses in just the very basic things and be successful at it. And my eyes have been open to how to identify something that is needed and just to start, and that entrepreneurship doesn't have to be overthought. So when you live in a small African town like the one that I live in, I'm telling you, you learn a lot about entrepreneurship, and you learn and you see people just quickly identifying a need. You see the needs that are around. They're everywhere. When you're in a big city, you don't see them as much. The competition is a lot stiffer than it is in a small African town, in a small Namibian town. So when you live in a small Namibian town, a small African town, you really automatically by default get educated in terms of, you really get educated about what entrepreneurship really means. It doesn't mean having an MBA, although that's great. It's not necessary. You're in a town, they need X, Y, and Z, there's not a good printing shop, you dive right in and you fill that need. And that's what I've learned, and I've learned not to be afraid of entrepreneurship, and that even I can start a business and can have a business in Africa. It's very doable, and so I really like that. Alright guys, so those are the top 7 things that I actually love about living in a small Namibian town. I think I've said this before, but I'm a very introspective and reflective person. So just because I talk about challenges and just because I have challenges definitely does not mean that I hate Namibia, that I'm completely miserable. No, I just don't look at life as that black and white. I take the challenges as they come, and I recognize that they will come, and that's part of being an expat and living on another continent, and that's part of life, because life is full of challenge. So just because I talk about things and just because I share the challenges that I have doesn't mean that you guys have to feel that I need to move home. It just means that I'm being open and I'm sharing with you, and when I'm letting my feelings come out and not bottling them up. And because I'm introspective, I have been able to really appreciate and see the bigger picture of my life here and of the challenges that I have faced. And it's because of those challenges that I have been able to grow as an individual, as a 34-year-old woman, and to gain an appreciation for the challenges of life and why they happen. And as I mentioned before, I try to see the silver lining in everything, every experience. That's just how I am. So I have really thought a lot about the different things that I used to think were really annoying about living in a small Namibian town, and realize they have been blessings in disguise and been healthy experiences to go through. Hey guys, so I'm standing behind this train and I wanted to tell you a funny story. One time I came to this area where I recorded this video with a family friend. And so I was with my son also, and the other family had kids as well. So the kids were playing in this train behind me. They were playing in and behind it. Even my son at one point. Some of the girls went to use the restroom behind it and things like that. So something told me, you know, let me just go get Lance from behind, because I always like him. I always like him to be where I can see him. So I got Lance, and you know, the kids were kind of playing or whatever, just where we could see them. And a few minutes later, this guy that works here comes up to us and tells us not to let the kids play behind the train because there's a cobra snake that lives behind the train. Which scared the hell out of me because my son had just been playing behind it. So that freaked me out. And I went home and Googled cobra snakes of Namibia, and they are no joke. They are the real deal. They are venomous. They're deadly, basically. And they're big and they're scary. So this is the train I'm talking about right here. Behind this train there is a ditch. It's obviously an old train. It's not being used. But there's a big ditch behind the train. Pretty terrifying. So let's go up a bit closer and I want to show you guys the train. It has some history. I don't know what the history is, but there's definitely some history here. So it's written in Afrikaans, South African Railways, 1912 to 1960. I don't know if that's German or Afrikaans, I'm not sure. Whatever that means. Somebody can translate this for me. One of my Namibian viewers, maybe, I don't know. So yeah. And as you guys know, Namibia was formerly a part of apartheid South Africa. So if you look up the history of Namibia, you'll see just that history there. So I'm not surprised that this says South African Railways. So yeah.